If you ever roll home after a long weekend and find a shiny steel fence slicing your pasture like a zipper with a laminated sign bragging, "Temporary safety barrier. Approved your coffee." Goes cold before your brain catches up. That was me, Cole Walker, 2 on 80 acres outside Red Butte, Arizona. Mesquite and red dirt and a pond that steams when winter shows up late. Fences I stretched one T-post at a time, and right where my deed line meets suburbia, Sun Mesa Estates had been blooming beige and bossy for years. But we had a deal. They stay on their side, I stay on mine. Until I didn't. I'd been gone 4 days. Hauling a bull to gallop, came back at sunrise to cows bawling, like they'd been shoved into a cul-de-sac. 10 heavy panels ran straight across my eastern pasture. Looped so close to the pond, I could have hit it with my hat. And there, in the middle, zip-tied. Like a blessing that. Approved sign approved by who the HOA's Arts and Crafts Committee. You know what I mean. I stood there in my own road, and something in me said, nope. Not today, so I set my coffee on a post. Fired up the tractor, chained the first panel, and eased forward. It gave like wet cardboard, then the next. And pretty soon, I was dragging the whole metallic snake up to the sun. Mesa gate, coiled it real neat, hammered in a stake, and wired on a barn board I'd painted red. Temporary mistake. Corrected on private property. Then I took a stale sip and felt my heartbeat drop back where it belonged. 2 hours later, a midnight blue SUV climbed my drive, like it paid the mortgage out. Stepped Pamela Dorsey, HOA president heels. That could aerate a lawn navy blazer, that smile. Folks practice when they're about to invoice your soul. Mr. Walker, you committed vandalism. That fence was for neighborhood safety. You endangered families. She said it like she was reading my eulogy. I looked at her, then at the scuff her heel was making in my caliche. Ma'am, you planted steel on my side and caged my herd between metal and water. If that's safety, your committee's got the wrong dictionary. She narrowed her eyes like she was counting bylaws. You'll be hearing from our attorneys. Bring crayons, I said, so they can color inside the boundary lines. This time she didn't laugh. She spun gravel and left a dust trail that smelled like trouble. 3 days later, a man with a tie still creased from the box handed me a manila envelope, like it might explode. I'd been served. Sun Mesa was suing me for destroying community infrastructure, reckless endangerment, interference with a safety initiative, and they claimed a historic easement corridor that nobody had bothered to record for 50 years, which is HOA speak for. We didn't check a single map, but let's pretend we did. So I called my attorney, Riley Boone. The only person I know who reads a plat map like sheet music. Don't talk to them, talk to me, she said. Also hire surveyors, the kind with drones and LiDAR, not strings and guesses. We ran the numbers, and numbers don't care about opinions. The report came back clean and mean. Their fence had crossed south into my land by 29 yards, not inches yards, and it pushed 5 feet into the county's water setback. Around my pond, the kind of line you can't plead ignorance on. Riley started loading the counterpunch. Trespass, interference with agricultural operations, property damage, defamation, and I put my boots by the door because I had a feeling the next knock wouldn't be neighborly. You draw a line and stand on it, and people who hate lines start printing pamphlets at the Chevron. I found a glossy HOA newsletter with a photo of me beside the downed panels, cropped real cute, so you couldn't see the deed markers or the pond vandal destroys safety barrier. Families at risk. A man in a Sun Mesa polo glared like I'd kicked a kindergarten that evening. I checked the game cam near the pond and caught reflective vests slow walking the fence line at dusk, a drone buzzing low like a nosy mosquito. I walked over calm with my Remington slung and empty evening boys. You lost one jumped and mumbled, perimeter reassessment. Authorized, you're on my land, I said. And the drone came down like it remembered. Gravity they shuffled off, but one kid, maybe 25, stayed just long enough to whisper. Looked at the complaint. Something's off. Then he hustled away, and that pebble stuck in my boot all night. Next day, Riley called Cole. They filed a servitude map. Says your east pasture sits under a shared wildlife corridor from 1968. My stomach dropped, then climbed back because I'd never seen anything like that in my title chain. Riley's voice got flat. The paper looks old. The ink looks microwave. We hired a forensic doc expert who pulled the scan apart, layer by digital layer, fonts that didn't exist in 1968. A registrar stamp misspelled by someone who'd never lived here, even a software watermark from 2017. It wasn't history. It was Halloween. And while we lined that up, someone filed an environmental complaint against me for fertilizer. Runoff photos of discolored water and dying grass signed by Harold Pike, a tough Vietnam vet who used to own the next spread and died 7 years ago. That happened. The sheriff opened a criminal file for false report and identity fraud, and I pulled a trail cam shell I'd gutted to hide a GoPro because a week earlier I'd tucked it into a half-finished panel before I ever hooked the chain. Call it a hunch. The footage showed 3 midnight visits, unmarked trucks, workers nudging panel lines, and on the third night, Pamela herself in high heels and a reflective vest pointing like a runway marshal. Move it 10 feet in. He won't notice. Riley's jaw went concrete. We're taking this to court and the county. And if we must, the 6 o'clock news, she said. And I don't love cameras unless they're mine, but I love sunlight. And sunlight was overdue. Then the nervous kid reappeared at my gate in jeans and a plain T name's Evan Holt. Not just a survey tech. Licensed PI hired by a Sun Mesa homeowner who smelled rot in their budget he'd embedded for 3 weeks and brought a folder and a flash drive inside. Invoices paid from the HOA's emergency fund for fencing. No one voted on rentals, billed to Cactus Line Solutions, a company owned by Pamela's cousin Time Cards, in perfect blocks. Like someone stamped them on a lunch break. A doc titled Project Legitimation Plan, spelling out how to backdate county requests. Write minutes from meetings that never happened. Tidy a ledger like it was a mood board and a voice memo. Pamela again. If this escalates, we burn the records. My hands shook, not from fear, from adrenaline, like right before a bronc shoots from the chute. Riley filed our countersuit and carried Evan's package into the DA's office. We had a case number by Thursday. A local reporter aired the drone overlays that traced the 29-yard intrusion in red and the water setback in blue cows, grazing through the reopened corridor like a living diagram that night. Sun Mesa held an emergency meeting closed to the public, but Evan knows his way around screen audio. We heard Pamela call me a domestic agitator and repeat the burn the records line, which is not a sentence you want floating in the same county as a grand jury. Then the surveyor's office called someone had submitted that same fake servitude to amend the official plat. Not just waiving a counterfeit in court, trying to rewrite the county's book in the county's own book. We drove straight in, showed the misspelled stamp, the digital layers, the modern font. The clerk flagged the file for fraud review and sent it to the state. The DA widened the scope to potential wire fraud because money had hopped state lines through those shell companies. And suddenly this wasn't about offense. It was about how power sneaks around when it thinks no one's watching. Court Monday. The old courthouse leans a little like it learned to hold against wind. I wore clean jeans and a white shirt my sister ironed. Pamela swept in like a battleship with 2 attorneys and a binder thick enough to qualify as a step stool. The hearing was straight. Boundary facts. The alleged easement any authority the HOA could claim over my soil. Riley opened easy and hammered hard. My deed, the 1999 survey, new LiDAR scans, GPS cattle tracks that showed how the herd got pinched like a crowd at a bad exit, then the GoPro, night vision high heels, move it 10 feet in. He won't notice objection on relevance, overruled. The forensic expert walked the map through its own autopsy. Wrong fonts, wrong timestamps, wrong century. For the watermark, and then Evan took the stand, calm. Voice licensed PI retained by a homeowner, receipts for emergency fund invoices to Cactus Line and Urban Vista. Same Houston mailbox, late-night logins from former board members long gone. Pamela's memo about burning records as the county clerk testified that after our countersuit, Pamela's office tried to amend the plat with that fake map. And that was the hinge. Intent isn't an accident. The judge ruled fast. Illegal structure on private property, no easement, no authority, trespass, abuse of process, defamation. Sun Mesa to pay me $58,400. And as the words settled, a deputy handed Pamela a folded notice. DA's office opening a formal investigation for fraud forgery, misuse of funds obstruction. She went pale in a way makeup can't fix, and walked out. Without looking back. The feeling in my chest wasn't triumph so much as the ache. You notice only when the thorn's finally gone. Collecting from an audited HOA is like trying to rope fog. But the rest moved. 3 board members resigned. The treasurer left a letter saying Pamela bypassed votes and pressured him to sign blank checks with a copy of one made to Urban Vista. No address, no website, no work logs. Homeowners gathered with headlamps on the sidewalk. Since the rec center got padlocked, voted to remove Pamela and pursue dissolution. The county froze enforcement, while lawyers untied the covenants. No new fees, no porch light tickets, no trash can police. A week later, a certified envelope from the State Ethics Board barred Pamela from any HOA or civic fiduciary role in Arizona. Someone scrawled at the bottom, "Justice is permanent too." E.H. Evans' handwriting straight and sure. The quiet that followed felt earned neighbors I'd never met. Brought banana bread. And apologies one young guy offered to sell me his lot. Cheap, I laughed and said I had enough pasture. I sanded an old road sign, painted it red and stenciled in white. Private range,